At some point in time, we are all going to leave planet Earth. Some of us are going to do that all of a sudden, but most of us are going to do that over a period of time, where our minds, our bodies just begin to slowly deteriorate or decay. What happens when you begin to slip? And how do you know when it's happened to you? Join us on Consider This program today. We'll break it down for you. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Grant Soliven.
Man, we are happy to have you along. We are talking about one of my most concerning, least favorite conversations in the world. I believe with my whole heart that your mind will move toward its most dominant thought. And this has been my baby. This is all I've ever done. I've been, as they say, unemployed since 1987 because I work for myself, right? Don Hodson and I co-founded the Financial Enhancement Group in 97. I started working in this industry in 87, 2 weeks before the crash. And, so this is all I've really ever known. But the moral of the story is I have taken care of some families for more than 4 decades. In the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, now the 2000 teens, and now the 2021s, right? It's just hard to imagine. But what I know about me is that my body doesn't heal as well as it used to heal. And that is apparent, right? Because I still do crazy things like yoga and working out, right? I know that I'm not able to heal. I don't know when my mind is not as proficient as it once were. So I take tests all the time to, and I report that to my partnership group and our leadership team, mental test on my iPad to say, okay, is my score still high? And, am I still doing okay? But the bottom line is we really all do slip over time. I can certainly see it for families that I've taken care of for years and years and years. And that's really what I want to get into. So when I say that, I want to get into this discussion about that. And I'm going to give Grant the opportunity to kind of open this up, and then he can take it and tell me where you want to go. But it's something I think we all have to be aware of and we have to be prepared for. Because when it happens, you're not going to know it. And I've offended a few people by saying this over the years, but it's the best way I know how to explain it. You don't wake up one day without a picnic basket, right? You wake up one sandwich short of a picnic or one bite out of one sandwich short of a picnic. It's gradual. And whoever you spend most of your life with, unless Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or something else really gets in the way, generally, y'all tend to slip together. And I will just tell you this as a trusted advisor, right? I would love to tell you that people bring me their retirement money today and come in to see us at the Financial Enhancement Group because of the 12 or 13 things that I've created over the last 25 years. I would love to tell you that it's because we're brilliant and we've got a great team of 35 people. And honestly, we're very, very blessed. We really do have brilliant people. But more people come to see me, at least personally, because I've done it for so long. They assume that I know what I'm doing, and it becomes a household name. And you've got to be very, very, very careful with that because there are people who've done things for a long time that do not know what they're doing. Some of the stuff that we see brought into our office, it's sad. And these are people that you would think know better. And it's not with any intent that they've tried to harm anybody, I don't believe. But I don't think they're acting as a fiduciary standard in a lot of cases. And just because you or your family have dealt with somebody for 20 or 30 years, there's still things you need to ask. There's still things that you need to know other than just the relationship part to make sure that they're still making the right decisions and how those decisions are being made. So I'll drop the mic. Go ahead, Grant.
No, absolutely. And Joe, thanks for teeing it up. I think the area I think we want to focus on, especially in this segment, is a term that I believe you have coined very beautifully. Incremental incapacitation. And you and I co-authored an article that's going out in a lot of our news sources, Herald Bulletin, etc., that will dive deeper into this. But you said it well. Most of our families, when they come in, it's not an all or nothing game. It's not, Grant, here's my significant other. They no longer can make any financial decisions. It is a slow progression, incremental incapacitation. And Joe, actually, if you would, just explain the heart of why you chose those words, because I think it's really going to tee us up for a great conversation.
When you look at most power of attorney documents or successor trustee documents, in the will or wherever it happens to be, it'll typically say that if a doctor declares you incapacitated, mentally or physically, or a judge says you're incompetent, then all of a sudden the successor trustee gets to take over, or the durable power of attorney kicks in, whichever. And I said 33 years earlier, it's 34 years this year that I've done this. I've seen people be in comas and car wrecks where it's pretty clear they are physically incapacitated. I've seen a couple put into facilities where it's pretty clear that they were mentally, that needed to happen. Mm-hmm. But doctors are very hesitant to sign off on that paper. Our chief operating officer is an MD. And Gary said, why would I want to be in court for the next 2 weeks? Right? Because if, my document said that originally, and let's say that Kaylee or Kendra or Barb decided to take me to court or take me to the doctor, and I'm combative, right? Emotionally, I don't want to give up control of everything. It just doesn't happen. I'm just telling you, in 34 years, you may have seen it happen to the people we take care of, it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And when I'm talking about over 2,000 families, I've really done this for a long time, 31 states, so it's not just Indiana. And, people that are family-loving people they just won't do it. So the way it's set up, Grant, it's a nuclear option. Mm-hmm. And, there are times when there are some decisions I should be allowed to make. Whether right. I want chocolate cake or broccoli, I should be allowed to make. Right. Whether or not I take a shower for the next 2 weeks, I probably shouldn't be allowed to make, right? Not paying my bills, not paying my taxes, deciding not to go to church. There are things that we do in our lives where if you don't do this, you probably ought to lose this role or this responsibility. And we created incremental incapacitation in such a way so that when I can't do some things, we're responsible for $655 million as of this morning, at the time of the recording of this show, right? If I'm not paying my home bills, it probably shouldn't be my name on that sheet of paper. Right. Is that fair?
That's
right.
Fair.
Because at the end of the day, I'm the one that's responsible, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to think about that. And so it's incremental, right? So as my ability to do things goes down, then the roles and responsibilities that I have, the flexibility that I have, is diminished in such a way that I've agreed to it beforehand. Right. So yes. Been working on this for 4 or 5 years. We have the trust division is done. So Financial Enhancement Group can be a successor trustee. You guys do the life issues. FEG does the fiduciary, the family fiduciary duties where we take care of the financial things. And I have built and am building and will continue to build an answer or a solution for what I call incremental incapacitation.
Mm-hmm. And it's beautifully put because obviously, Joe, we've talked about this situation for years. We don't ever want to see a family in the nuclear of nuclears. For example, we've seen families, adult children like myself, take keys away from parents, car keys. That's a hard discussion. But when do you allow the family members that are taking care of you start taking away your financial independence? And not maliciously. But Joe has probably one of the greatest examples I've ever heard in this area where a family member heard Joe speak, came in because of his duty at university, said that he couldn't let Joe manage his money, ended up suffering incremental incapacitation, and went through over $5 million of him and his spouse's resources because no one could take or no one had documentation that emotionally allowed the spouse or the kids to take away the checkbook. And that's what we want to prevent from happening to you. Trust estate documents are often brought to our office and our desks, and families say, Grant, Joe, Aaron, other advisors, this is what I want to have happen when I die. Here's what I want to have happen. And Joe has trained our team to ask the next most important question. Fantastic. What does this tell us to do when you're one sandwich short of a picnic? And so this is where when you're beginning to slip, provide language. Tell people ahead of time how they can take care of you and give them permission to do so over time. Remember, this is not an all or nothing game. It is not an all or nothing game. And it can be hard.
But the challenge is the way that your documents probably read today and the way the system is set up, it is all or nothing. And that becomes, it just really becomes, frustrating. People are just really hesitant to do things that are not compliant with what you want. And if you don't give them that permission, if you don't say, hey, when you can't do this, take this from me. I'm not going to argue. Here's the deal. So I have my own nuclear option that's going into mine, right? And you may have heard of this inside of some things. It's, Grant, I'm going to leave you $50,000 when I die, but if you contest it, you get nothing, right? And so in my incremental incapacitation, the way it's going to be worded inside of my trust is essentially with the first thing, if I argue, if I have a test that I built, building, and a committee that I've appointed. Right. And if the three of them say I'm at this stage, you're DEFCON 1, right? Then I lose this. I'm allowed to argue on one. If I can state my case, I've got a little wiggle room. But when it gets to 2, there's no wiggle room. And if I contest it, I lose everything. But I put it in writing. It's my words. It's and it's the way that it is. And I can show you how to safeguard against yourself. And I can show you how to safeguard against the world inside of some of the problems that are there. And, we're now starting to see more and more people. I call it a personalized trust. You go to your attorney and you have a trust drawn up, and in the trust, it may name your kids, which in my opinion should not be the fiduciaries. They can be in charge of the life issue as successor trustees, but maybe they'll name their kids, and then they get to a corporate trustee. We've got a case right now where I've got $900,000 sitting in an account, and I can't pay for a funeral because a local bank was named the trustee, and 9 months later, they have not been willing to accept the responsibility or decline the responsibility. And so the money's sitting there in tandem. The mutual or the mortuary is not getting paid. Right. And, it's just, this is just silly. Right. It's just silly. So we need to have the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and be very, very clear about what it is you want and what it is we can do and what it is your kids can do. They should have job descriptions. If you're going to name somebody the executor of your will or somebody the successor of your successor trustee, I didn't hire Grant and say, by the way, go be a planner. Right? He had some direction. Maybe not all the direction I should have given. We do better today. But at least you had some direction. I pointed you in a direction.
You did.
Most trusts don't even point in a direction. Right? It's, if I die, do this. And most of us just don't die. Go to yourlifeafterwork.com. You can sign up for your Next Steps meeting. 800-928-4001.